Shoulder mobility assessment is what I'm going to be covering in this lesson. Now, we know, especially from previous lessons in Surge Strength Drown certification, that shoulder mobility is critical for swimmers. And so this is why it's one of the first assessments that we're actually going to do. And so the athlete's standing tall. And first, actually, before you do this, you need to measure their hand. So their hand length from the wrist crease all the way to the longest finger, whichever that one is. So you have that measurement before you get started. Then the athlete's standing tall. They're going to make fists, and they're going to reach one arm under and one arm over top in one motion, and you're going to measure where it ends up being, the distance from that. And then they're going to do the same thing to the other side. How you're going to score that is then if it's less than 1.5 times the hand length, then if the fists, the distance of the fists is less than 1.5 times that hand length, they get a 2. If the fists are greater than 1.5 times the hand length, they get a 1. And if there's pain, 0, you're referring out. So let's actually look a video of what this is going to look like. So again, the athlete's standing tall. We've already measured one hand underneath, one hand over top. You're going to measure the distance between those two fists. Then they're going to go to the other side as well. And you're going to measure that. You'll put those measurements down on your movement assessment sheet, and then you're going to figure out what that score is. So hopefully the goal is for all swimmers to be at 2s where it's less than 1.5 times that hand length in terms of where the fists are. Now, if one side is going to be a lot farther apart than the other, where the fists are 1.5 greater than 1.5 times, and the other side is less than, that's still okay. You just need to proceed with caution and just understand that in your mind, you're not going to want to push that shoulder, especially the one, let's say like I have here, the left shoulder is a little bit further apart. Oh, and by the way, how you measure it. So when it says left or right, you're measuring the arm that goes underneath. So if this one we're saying down here at the bottom, the left is a 1 scored and the 0, or the right is a 2, that'd be the left arm going underneath and the right arm over top. That means that was a lot farther apart, whereas the right underneath, left over top was a lot closer together. So the actual side is whatever arm is underneath. But let's say the left scored a 1 and the right scored a 2. So for the left shoulder, you're just going to be a little bit more cautious and aware in general. There are some instances where you're never going to have a problem with asymmetries. I've seen it before, but that's more the minority case where at some point there's going to be something that creeps up. So just make sure you know that in your mind. That's not a stop, send them to the healthcare provider. That is, if there's pain in this test, you send them to the healthcare provider. But if it's just an asymmetry, just understand that probably over time, that's going to start even out. In swimming specifically, especially when we're talking about shoulder mobility being off, that can be correlated to how are they breathing when they're in the water doing freestyle specifically. Are they always breathing to one side, or are they breathing every other, every 3 strokes? So that's something to take into account too. If you have a lot of athletes that are always breathing to one side and then all of them are having asymmetries, that's probably something you as a coach need to think about implementing, either swimming with a front-loaded snorkel more often or encouraging them to breathe every 3. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you need to be aware that there are asymmetries if the athlete presents that, and just to remember which shoulder that is, or to let the athlete know, hey, just make sure you're extra careful when doing things with your left, just in case you feel anything, because that just is that much closer to inviting an injury in, and we don't want to do that. Again, making the comparison if the left scored a 1 and the right scored a 2. Again, if there is a 0, that means there was pain involved in the test. That is sharp. That's not a dull thing. That's not a soreness from the workout. It's a sharp pain. Refer out to the healthcare provider. Make sure they're checked out. So again, refer to your movement assessment sheet to score that.